search is a very strong avenue that B2B advertisers should be playing in, right? It helps them target the right keywords. It helps them really get a better cost per click depending on the keywords that they're bidding on. And it also helps them really meet buyers that are showing intent.
Hey gang, it's Monday, August 16th. Jillian and listeners, welcome to the Behind the Numbers Daily, an eMarketer podcast made possible by VTEX. I'm Marcus. Today I'm joined by one of our principal analysts covering B2B. For just one more day, it's Jillian Ryan.
My final show. Thank you for having me, Marcus. It's a pleasure to be back with you and get to talk to the audience one final time about my absolute favorite topic in the entire world, B2B marketing.
B2B marketing, ladies and gentlemen. Jillian's last episode. So we had her on for the weekly listen last Friday. You might have heard us talk about it. Then she's saying goodbye. How are you feeling today, Jillian? You good?
It's been a bittersweet couple of days. I'm very sad to leave my eMarketer family behind, to leave our audience behind, but excited to talk about B2B marketing because I'm literally going to go back to being a practitioner and get to do all the great things that I've been talking about on the podcast for the last few years. I'm going to go impart them for a B2B tech company, and I'm very excited about it.
Yes, indeed. Moving on to the next chapter of her life. We're so happy for you. It kills us to see you leave, but we're also, really proud of being able to call you our colleague and friend, and very excited for what you're going to do in the future. We do still have you for this episode. We're going to be talking about B2B and some things that you want the listeners to know, to think about this next 6 months and into 2022. Before that,
yes,
we start with the fact of the day. Onions make you cry because they release acid. I don't cook anyway, who are we kidding? But acid, that sounds like us a lot. So onions, they have an enzyme called lacrimatory. I think I nailed that.
That sounded very acidy.
That's only half the word, and I'm already struck. Factor synthase, which converts amino acids in the onion into sulfenic acid. The sulfenic acid becomes unstable when the onion is being cut and breaks apart into thiosulfonate. That's the onion's odor, and propanotriol S oxide. That's the gas that makes you tear. I feel like I nailed those words.
I think that you pronounced them 100% correctly and it just rolled off the tongue. No struggle.
Thanks.
So this is anecdotal, but I do feel like when you have sharper knives, you're less likely to get those tears.
Really?
Victoria's nodding, so I must be onto something.
Okay.
And I also think that counter height and height is a big part of it. So I'm very tall and I have low counters. So I feel like in my new apartment, I don't cry over onions because I'm further away from the cutting board.
Okay. They sound a lot cooler than my solution, which was, I was like, how do you stop yourself from crying? Onion goggles, which are a thing.
Or maybe you could use those Facebook Ray-Ban smart glasses that we talked about on Friday.
Right. Or a pair of those.
That's the real use.
Yep.
Let's be honest.
So onion goggles, they're a real thing. They look a lot like you're about to play racquetball. But maybe they double as racquetball glasses too.
Is this really a real thing?
It's a real $20 retail.
I'm literally Googling it.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
They're wacky.
They look insane.
They look like swim glasses.
Swimming goggles?
Swim goggles.
Yep. They probably
Very
double as
strange.
that too. Get yourself a pair. You can use them for everything.
They come in multiple colors, people.
They do.
It's a fashion statement.
They've got millennial pastels and everything. Anyway, today's real topic, B2B and beyond. So Jillian, we're talking about B2B today. There's zero structure for this episode. It's Jillian's last episode. It's her episode. She's going to tell us exactly all about what she thinks are the most important couple of themes to think about in B2B now that she's leaving us. This is her parting gift to us. What do we need to focus on in the next 6 months and beyond? So Jillian, where do we start?
There's a lot of places to start. Yep. I think to give us a little structure, I think maybe we could start with my final report that published. So at this point, I think it's 2 weeks ago. And it's a report that's very near and dear to my heart because I've written it 4 times since I've been here. And it's basically the report that summarizes our eMarketer forecasts on US B2B advertising. And this year, so we have some new estimates that are super exciting. And I'll go through a few of like the main highlights. But I think, we started this forecast, like I said, I think 4 years ago, maybe even more than that, at the end of 2017, not even knowing if we'd be able to get an estimate for any sort of market sizing for this space. There's like hardly any data on what B2Bs do with their advertising, which has always been a challenge for me in this role, but also something exciting because it's like knowing that the work that I am doing is really adding value because there's nothing else out there.
Right.
It's like, and this has become the standard, honestly, for the B2B industry to really benchmark themselves and how the ad market is growing. So I'll give a couple of, highlights. So this is a July 2021 number. And according to our estimates, in 2023, so we're looking out, 2 years ahead, US B2B digital ad spending will near the $15 billion threshold. And that's super exciting because if we look back to the beginning of our forecasting period in 2018, so this is pre-COVID, B2Bs were just spending like just over $5 billion. Mm-hmm. So that means in the last 6 years, from 2018 to 2023, it's going to triple in size, the ad market. And that's really, talking about like, what do I want to talk about with B2B? It's been that since I joined eMarketer at the end of 2015, I've just been able to witness so much exciting transformation in how B2Bs go to market and how they reach their audiences. And they've really just started using digital in a way that, I don't think I ever anticipated, even as I've been writing forward-looking analysis all these years.
Right. Let's talk about, we've got to talk about the pandemic, right? So we've seen this forecast from pre-pandemic up till now and into the future, but how did the pandemic affect? A couple of things you could point to in terms of how the pandemic affected B2B ad spend?
So we actually updated this forecast in the middle of 2020, so kind of in the thick of COVID. And at the time, the B2B digital ad market was one of the only bright spots, which is a term I hate to use when referencing anything about the pandemic, but it was an area that actually grew. And that's because, we've talked about this so many times, Marcus. Virtual events were kind of physical events were out of the equation, which led to a lot of virtual events. And it also just led to a transformation of the ways that B2Bs connect with their audiences. And digital ads became a prime way for B2B marketers to try to connect with their audiences in a new way because they were limited due to the pandemic. So last year in our August 2020 update, we said that US B2B digital ad spending would grow 22.6% in 2020. And this year, when we revised our update, we actually said that it was even more than that. And that last year, the ad market grew by 32.5%.
Yep.
And so this is just really great growth, really great growth. So basically, it went from $6.55 billion in 2019, pre-COVID, to $8.68 billion in 2020. And then this year, there was still really strong growth, 24.9% growth, according to our most recent forecast. So that's even more than what we thought the growth would be last year for 2020. And we crossed the $10 billion threshold this year to $10.84 billion. So it's just a really exciting time for the market. And that honestly makes it really hard for me to walk away from this forecast because it's something that I've just loved doing. And it's been so exciting for me to see just how, the real maturation. And that's been happening in the space. But it's also, yes, Marcus, really, really been driven by the pandemic.
Yeah.
It's changed the ways that B2Bs advertise. And that's also reflective when we think about the traditional split too. Because I talked about how in 2023, digital is going to be almost $15 billion and traditional is going to be nearly the same at $15.78 billion. So we're getting to that inflection point.
Yeah,
we're not there.
That's
we're
what really jumps
there.
out to me is that 2019, so pre-pandemic, B2B digital ad spending accounted for 30%, basically 30% of the total of B2B ad spending was digital. Fast forward to 2023, which is just 4 short years, and it's nearly half.
Yeah.
Where's that heading, in your opinion? Does that start to flatten out eventually, or is it going to just keep eating up the total B2B ad spending market?
I love that question. So I have to say the party line is it's beyond our forecasting period.
Right.
So we don't have a specific number.
Right.
But I can say given the trends, and this is a forecast that I work really closely with Peter Volley, who our listeners obviously know well. And Peter and I are confident that yes, that threshold, that tipping point will be crossed in 2024 and digital will continue to gain share. It's just we don't know the exact percentages at this point. It's too far out to really forecast. But I think the main takeaway is that, the long-term transformation of B2Bs using digital ads is here. The pandemic has fueled it, and that the trajectory is going to continue to go in that direction. So the pandemic acceleration is not going away. It will not reverse itself, and digital ads will continue to be a major part of the B2B media mix moving forward.
Right. You said moving forward. I mean, right now we've got, as you mentioned, $11 billion in 2023, closer to $15 billion. What's behind those digital B2B ad dollars today, and how will that change in the future? Will it be the same types of advertising in the future, or is it going to shift?
Love it. So this is another really exciting part of this forecast this year, so every year that we've done it, we've basically tried to get more information. So last year we broke out industries, which was a really big thing at the time. And this year, Peter and I were like, oh my gosh, we really, really hope we can get some sort of format breakdown. And we did. So we have a number for B2B display and for B2B search. So, I mean, the main story there is basically like display is growing much faster than search. At this point, so 2021, B2B display is less than half of the total US B2B digital ad market. It's 47%. And search is 49.5%. So search is still a little bit higher. But like I said, B2B display is growing faster. So by 2023, display is going to overtake search in terms of share. Display will have exactly 50% of that just less than $15 billion number. And search will have 47% of the market. There's an other there too, which is super small that, includes a few other different types of formats that we don't really break out there. But that's why those two, it doesn't exactly add up to 100.
Why is display able to tip the scales in its favor come 2023?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, I the headline that search is losing share doesn't mean that search is not going to be growing year over year.
Right.
Even this year, it's growing 19.5%. It'll grow 14.1% next year. It'll still grow 11.9% in 2023. Search is a very strong avenue that B2B advertisers should be playing in for a variety of reasons, right? It helps them target the right keywords. It helps them really get a better cost per click, depending on the keywords that they're bidding on. And it also helps them really meet buyers that are showing intent because they're searching for the product, right? Or the service or the company. But display is growing much faster. A big part of that is driven by LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the largest player in B2B display. It's not bigger than search. It actually, this year, it's going to make up 32% of the $5 billion that's spent on display. And then we don't have specific breakouts for other display channels, but display includes all other social, so Facebook, Twitter. It also includes CTV. It includes audio, so that includes podcasts, which, I mean, we're very familiar, as are our listeners, how, there are a lot of advertisers that are using that avenue to reach their buyers. And then it also includes the trade publications and consumer publications like a Wall Street Journal that also has a business audience. And those are being used very heavily because of the pandemic. And it includes virtual event sponsorship and webinar sponsorship. So there's a lot of things that make up the sum of display, and B2Bs are really seeing the value in all of that. And some of it's driven by the pandemic, and some of it's also just a continuation of where they've been putting dollars. And since basically I started covering the space in 2015.
Yeah, you mentioned that LinkedIn, US LinkedIn B2B display ad revenue, incredibly resilient. It's going to capture about a third of the B2B display ad spending for LinkedIn in 2019. It will hold on to that third through our forecast into 2023 as the dollars continue to tick up year on year for LinkedIn. Gillian, what B2B ad formats are you most excited about and why?
I mean, LinkedIn, I think, is a really great avenue. And I know that we were just talking about it, but I think as the cookie deprecates, I think that B2B advertisers are going to have a harder time playing in the open web. And I think going to a trusted, publisher, a walled garden that has a lot of vetted first-party data is a very attractive proposition for an advertiser.
Just to be clear, Gillian isn't going to LinkedIn next.
No. Does it sound like I am? No, that'll not be my new home. Who knows, maybe in the future, but not this time around. And then also, I think CTV is another really powerful format, again, because of cookie deprecation that's coming up. B2Bs don't spend a ton there. We don't have an exact number, but we know it's a very small portion right now of display, but it's a growing portion year over year.
Yep. Other themes, Gillian? What else you got for us? What else should we be focusing on B2B wise?
So I think something that has been exciting for me to watch since I joined and in all of my coverage has been how B2Bs have really shored up, how they think about performance marketing, how they think about targeting their audiences. And there's a lot of trends that have coalesced, I think, over the last 6 years in my experience as an analyst. So we have things like account-based marketing. When I first started, it was like a buzz term. It was something that a couple of random people were talking about, mainly driven by the vendors that are out there who are trying to get market share and talk about why B2Bs need to be doing it. And it's really become mainstream. And a big part of what drives account-based marketing is the use of better data, of cleaned data, of more accurate data. And that's something that B2Bs have really, really been focused on as they think about how to reach the right target audience and not just kind of spraying and praying to like their mailing list and hoping that it gets in front of the right person, right? So that's exciting to me. But what's interesting, and now it's like, well, as we look forward, right? B2Bs are so into that road that I feel like some of them have lost sight of the importance of brand marketing, of the importance of really good storytelling. And I'm kind of seeing a renaissance a bit when it comes to B2B branding. And I think, the goal will be over the next couple of years is to find the right balance of art and science. And how do I continue to do really excellent performance marketing? How do I go after the accounts that matter, that'll give me a high lifetime value, that are showing intent? But how am I also making sure that the beginning of my funnel or the beginning of my life cycle, whatever word you want to use, that at that juncture, that there's still really strong brand presence, that there's really strong thought leadership, and that we have a strong public relations strategy, that all of that is still part of the marketing value chain, because I think B2Bs have lost a little bit of that as they've been so focused on building their tech stack and making sure they're creating, personalized cadences. So finding the way to balance both of those two, I think, will be the key to successful B2B brands moving forward.
So we lose Gillian, unfortunately, but her research lives on Pro on emarketer.com. If you're a Pro subscriber, you can check it out. Account-based strategies in 2020. The fundamentals of maturing an ABM practice was her April 2020 report. Gillian, fill in the blank for me. The biggest challenge for B2B marketers in 2022 will be? Yeah,
I love that. You mentioned that ABM report, and I actually wrote that. I did the research pre-COVID, but I wrote it in a COVID world, in the very beginning of a very hectic COVID world. And I think the learning there, and something that B2Bs need to think about in 2022 and beyond, is that in many cases, it costs a lot of money. It takes a lot of time to set up your systems, to do the audience research, to come up with your strategy. And in many cases, sometimes it's easy to just rest on it and leave it as a set it and forget it. It's like, oh, we identified this audience and that's all we need to do. But B2Bs need to be a little bit more, you can't be real time because then you'll never get anything done, but have regular check-ins on, is this data still right? is this audience still right? Am I going after the right account? Is the content that I'm putting in front of that audience still correct? So just being mindful of maintaining the strategy and making sure that it's still working and performing. And in that case, I think measurement is going to be the biggest piece. Like B2Bs totally lag when it comes to their use of attribution models compared to their consumer counterparts. So figuring out how to close the loop there and iterate on what's happening is something that B2Bs need to be paying attention to. And if they're not doing it now, start doing it next week. After Labor Day. Take the summer off, but after Labor Day.
Don't listen to it. Do it right now. All right, that's all we've got time for the first half of the show. It's time now for the halftime report, where we summarize the key takeaways from a lead story in a handful of seconds. Jillian, give us one, maybe two takeaways if you want to from the first half for those B2B folks who are listening in.
Yeah, I mean, this is my final moment.
Parting gift.
I would say that I'm really excited to see what eMarketer and Insider Intelligence continues to do with my coverage area. I think that there's so much that's ahead, and my new company is a client, so I'm excited to be on the other end and stay in the orbit and see what great research is produced by whoever comes in and fills my shoes.
I don't want to be that person. No, I do not. Jillian, thank you so much for everything, for being on the show, for making the podcast what it is, for being a fantastic colleague, friend, plenty of chats in the office and out. Thank you so much. Thank you on behalf of Victoria, who edits the show. Thank you on behalf of the whole Content Studio team. I know you've done plenty of video stuff as well, and I don't know if I have the authority to do this, but thank you on behalf of the company.
I'll take it, Marcus. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure. And now I'll be listening, so don't let me down. Shout me out. I know I'm no Mark, let's be real, but like the occasional shout out,
Mark who?
You know.
Well, I got you. We'll definitely give
Mark
you a shout out.
Who? You have not forgotten him.
How could we? We definitely won't forget you. Thanks again. Folks listening in, you can follow Jillian on LinkedIn if you want to continue to learn from Jillian and see what else she's up to in the next chapter of her career. That's what we've got time for the lead story. Time now for In Other News, but first a quick word from our sponsor, VTEX. Retail's next competitive threat may come from a business model or channel that didn't even exist a few months ago. This modern dynamic requires companies to adapt quickly, pivoting business seemingly overnight, something traditional commerce platforms just can't support. There's a new enterprise commerce platform on the rise, one that's fast, flexible, and doesn't require 9 months and $1 million to get up and running. Go to vtexvtex.com/emarketer to learn more. Folks, we are back. It's time now for In Other News. Today, we are joined by one of our senior forecasting analysts. It's Eric Hagstrom.
Thanks for having me.
Hey chap, thanks for hanging out with us for In Other News today. In Other News, a brand new influencer marketing spend forecast. TikTok is testing vanishing videos and ads within Instagram's Shops tab. Story 1, Eric. You recently completed a brand new influencer marketing spend forecast. Talk to us about it. Talk to us about what the numbers are and how we reached those figures.
Yeah, so ultimately we went out and did what we normally do. We look at all the data out there. We talk to all the, important people we can, get our hands on, or I guess ears on in this case. And we came up with some pretty great numbers around influencer marketing spending. It's a large market. It's probably a little bit smaller than you'd think. There is a lot of hyperbole that does get thrown around this market, especially anything around influencers tends to get a little inflated. But really, it's a market that started when Instagram didn't have a whole lot of ad formats, and they were really selective about which ads were allowed to run on Instagram. This was when they were still a growing platform, but they had a massive audience. You could kind of get around by going straight to the influencer, paying them to promote your products. And it's really grown pretty exponentially since then. It's a couple $1 billion now. We expect it to grow pretty significantly over the next few years, especially as more commerce moves online and more of that commerce becomes social commerce and is conducted through these social networks.
So yeah, $3.7 billion this year. That's up from $2.7 billion the year before that. And we're expecting it to be a $4.6 billion industry by 2023. So there's some of the numbers for you. 34% growth this year in influencer marketing spending. Story 2. Yes, TikTok is now testing a new vanishing video feature called TikTok Stories. Yes, it is the same as Snapchat and Instagram and everyone else. Chaim Gartenberg of The Verge notes that, quote, stories live in a newly added slide-over sidebar where you'll be able to see stories posted by accounts you follow on TikTok for 24 hours before they are automatically deleted. True to TikTok's video-first nature, it seems stories have to be videos, not still images, close quote. There's still no current mention of a wider release date. WhatsApp is also rolling out vanishing photos and videos feature called View Once that deletes the media once it's been seen, or after 2 weeks if it's unopened. You can still screenshot the image. Users will know a message is View Once because the preview will be hidden and a large number 1 icon display will be there instead. Eric, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think ultimately when you talk about any of these social features, it's just that it's a feature. It's something that is software and can be easily recreated. The value in something like a Snapchat or a TikTok or an Instagram is the audience. These services all have massive audiences, and increasingly more commerce is happening on them. And of course, advertisers have been, spending a lot of money for a long time on something like Instagram, and the ads revenue on, a Snapchat or a TikTok is only growing. And this will just draw more attention and more eyeballs to the service over time.
So Ashley King of Digital Music News had an interesting point. She said vanishing videos are a novel feature, but the fear of missing out, FOMO they inspire, makes social media feel like a chore. I thought it was an interesting take. You got to see the stuff before it disappears, and you can't kind of view it at your leisure. So I thought it was an interesting take. Story 3. Instagram has begun beta testing ads within its Instagram Shops tab. Now, it's TechCrunch. As Jeremy Goldman, one of our principal analysts here, notes, the ads can be bought through Snapchat's typical auction model and can include either a single image or a carousel. Companies Away and Fenty Beauty are some of the folks in the pilot program. Eric, your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think Facebook and Instagram's initiatives around commerce are probably some of the most interesting ones that we, see. There's an incredible amount of commerce that happens on these sites already or is tied directly. When they bring the point of purchase onto the site itself, they collect that user data, they manage the relationship between the consumer and the retailer, and they're going to really be able to monetize the ad offering here too. Having ads in the Instagram Shop tab is interesting because, potentially you could create a situation where someone who has been shopping for, a certain brand of makeup can be advertised to by another brand. So very contextual. This is the business that Amazon has, become the 3rd largest digital ad seller in the US off of.
That is all we have time for. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, as always.
Thank you, of course, to Gillian, who joined us for the first half of the show, her final episode. Thanks to Victoria, who edits the show. Thanks to everyone listening. Check out our video interview tomorrow, August 17th, about digital customer experience, reimagining e-commerce and checkout. Dr. Tiffany Raymond, head of global consumer advocacy at PayPal, talks with eMarketer editorial director at Insider Intelligence, Rima Katz, about simulating the in-store experience and speeding up online conversions with live product expert chats, multiple payment options, and more. See you guys tomorrow, hopefully, for the Behind the Numbers Daily, an eMarketer podcast made possible by VTEX.